At the beginning of the story, we see Paul, who is gathering his belongings in the city. Suddenly, warning sirens begin to sound. He starts running through the empty streets and hides whenever necessary. He keeps moving forward, avoiding the screams and the sounds of destruction coming from all directions. Slowly, the entire city becomes filled with black smoke. Soon, Paul reaches an isolated house near a village. There, he finds two small, innocent children. He picks them up and tells them that everything will be okay. 15 years pass, and now both boys have grown up. Every day, they follow the same routine. During the day, they go outside to collect supplies, but as soon as night falls, they completely hide inside the house. As the sun begins to set, Joseph boards up all the windows and doors with wooden planks and calls their dog, Rocco, inside the house. Paul waits outside for his other son, Thomas, to return. He scolds Thomas harshly for coming home late. Thomas explains that he was helping the Rose family who live on a nearby farm. Before eating, all three of them tightly close all the doors and windows. Paul scolds Thomas again, warning him that if he comes home late again, he will not be allowed to go outside anymore and will be forced to stay inside all day. Seeing his brother being scolded so badly, Joseph laughs, but the argument soon turns into a fight. Paul immediately separates them and explains that they are humans, not animals. After dinner, Paul watches his sons playing chess. Suddenly, their dog Rocco starts scratching the ground and making whining noise. Paul immediately understands that this is a sign of danger. Paul and Thomas go downstairs and suddenly there is loud knocking at the door. It seems like monsters are trying to break in. Both of them hold the door tightly so it does not break. For a while, the monsters try to force the door open, but eventually they leave. After this, Thomas scolds Joseph for not helping them. However, Joseph explains that he was actually trying to understand the monsters' movement. There were a total of 3 attacks. The first lasted 10 seconds, the second 20 seconds, and the third only 1 second. According to Joseph, the first was just a test to see how easy it would be to get inside. The second time they used real force, and the third time they simply struck the door in anger and left. The next morning they examine the door and find deep claw marks on the wood. This door will not survive another night of attack. Therefore, Paul and both boys go outside to look for wood. Whatever supplies they find, they bring back home. Thomas is cutting wood while Paul goes to check on Joseph, who is building something in the workshop. After being questioned several times, Joseph reveals that he is trying to build a vehicle. He says he does not like feeling trapped and scared like this. However, the vehicle is not working. Despite this, Paul is very impressed. He carefully examines the vehicle and makes a few adjustments. After that, the vehicle finally starts. Overjoyed, Paul takes the boys out for a drive and teaches them how to drive. After about an hour, they return home. Paul notices that the windows are still very weak, so he sends the boys to collect materials from near the river. This makes Thomas angry because earlier it had already been decided that he would go to the neighbor's farm. However, Paul says that this task is more important. Both brothers then leave in the vehicle. Thomas tells Joseph that he could have done this work alone. He says that Paul only sent him along because Joseph is useless and cannot do anything by himself. In response, Joseph says that he does not need anyone's supervision and that he can manage on his own. He tells Thomas that if he wants to leave, he should go. In this way, the argument between the two brothers starts again. When the car passed by their neighbor's farm, Thomas got out and told Joseph to pick him up on the way back. At home, Paul reinforced the door even more and then went alone to smoke near the waterfall. There, he noticed a dark and frightening hole among the rocks. At the same time, Joseph went to the river. He tied himself to the vehicle and then went down in an old boat to search for supplies. Inside a cabinet, he found a photograph of a girl who was wearing very little clothing. Seeing this, he was completely shaken for a moment. Poor Joseph had never properly seen a girl before, and seeing one in such a state was a very different experience for him. As he continued searching for other things, small insects crawled out of a pile of garbage. They began flying around him and tried to land on his skin. Terrified by this, Joseph immediately ran away from them. Meanwhile, Thomas was helping the family on their neighbor's farm. However, it soon became clear that the real reason he went there was Charlotte, the daughter of the farm's owner. The two liked each other. Soon they started walking around the farm together. Charlotte showed Thomas a rope tied to a tree and explained that as a child, she was only allowed to play outside when she was tied to that tree. This way, she could run only within a limited area. Then the two began talking about how the previous world must have ended and how human rule had come to an end. When it was time for Thomas to leave, Charlotte hugged him tightly. But since the sun was setting, he had to go. When Paul returned home, he panicked upon seeing Rocco alone because neither of the boys was there. Soon, Joseph returned to the car. The vehicle did not start the first time, but after several attempts, it finally did. On the other side, Thomas was running with all his strength to get back home, but he soon slipped and fell into a crack in the ground. When Joseph reached the point where the two brothers had agreed to meet, he could not see his brother. Because of this, he went straight back home. When he told his father what had happened, Paul told Joseph to go inside and lock everything. Paul and Rocco then went together to search for Thomas. Soon, Thomas regained consciousness inside the pit. His body was badly injured. He lit a lighter and started looking around. Suddenly, he saw a creature pulling its hand out through a hole in the wall. He screamed loudly, and Paul and Rocco heard his voice. Slowly, Thomas pulled out a small knife and struck the creature's hand. After that, the creature pulled its hand back and went away. However, as Thomas stepped back, another creature came from above and grabbed his face, making it difficult for him to breathe. Just before Thomas lost consciousness, Paul arrived. He pulled the creature away and killed it immediately. After confirming that Thomas was alive, Paul and Rocco found a tunnel that led directly to the riverbank. Because it was dark, escaping through the forest was dangerous. Therefore, they decided to stay inside the pit until morning and completely block the entrance. They heard the sounds of creatures trying to enter the pit, so they prepared a fire. Suddenly, the ground began to shake. The creatures were moving underground and blocked the exit by filling it with soil. Rocco kept barking, and the shaking did not stop. Paul told his son and dog to move back, and he himself pushed the fire into the hole opening in the ground. As the creatures started coming out, a small explosion occurred, badly injuring Paul. Meanwhile, inside the house, Joseph heard strange noises and began making a plan. After some time, he sat on a chair in front of the main door and tied himself with a rope, pretending to be asleep. Soon, a creature removed the covering from the hole in the door and stuck its claw inside, as if checking whether Joseph was really asleep or not. When Joseph did not move, the creature fully entered the house. At that moment, Joseph pulled the rope, and a trap hanging above fell, trapping the creature. Happy with his plan, Joseph covered the cage with a cloth and went to sleep. Morning came, but when Paul and Thomas did not return, Joseph panicked and went out to search for them with the vehicle. At that time, Thomas cleared the fallen soil and began pulling his injured father out. Rocco also came out, and upon hearing the sound of the vehicle, he reached Joseph and quickly led him to his brother and father. Soon the two brothers reunited and placed Paul in the vehicle, taking him home. Carefully, they laid Paul on the bed. While talking, Thomas noticed the trap and removed the cloth. As soon as the cloth was removed, the creature went berserk. Joseph immediately covered it again and explained that light causes pain to this creature. They began treating Paul's wounds. Joseph explained that the previous night, this creature had entered the house in just 8 seconds, which was the fastest time so far. He felt that another creature had also come and gone. Their behavior was changing very rapidly, and Joseph began to feel that something was wrong. Thomas said that these creatures are intelligent. They had killed several creatures in the pit the previous day, and perhaps they had come for revenge. But Joseph replied, "Don't say we. Dad killed them. You only put their lives at risk. You didn't do what you were told." This angered Thomas. He said that he would show Joseph that he could kill these creatures too, and he prepared to kill the captured creature. Joseph stopped him because he wanted to study the creature. A struggle broke out between the two, and the creature escaped and hid under the bed. When it came out, Rocco started barking. The creature was about to attack when Joseph grabbed it, and Thomas cut off its head with an axe. Even then, Joseph wanted to learn more about the creature. He took the body to the workshop and began cutting it open. But even after examining it so much, he still could not understand what kind of creature it was. Then Thomas suggested that they should take Paul to Charlotte's house, as they had more space and medicines there. Joseph felt that the Rose family probably would not help them, but Thomas forced him to go anyway. They placed Paul in the car and took him to the farm. There, Charlotte's parents looked at Paul and said that they did not have any medicine and that it would be better if he were cared for at his own home. Charlotte also spoke up and said that they should help him, asking what they were doing, but no one listened to her. Her parents only said that if Thomas wanted, he could stay there. That way there would be more supplies left at Paul and Joseph's house. Hearing this, Joseph stormed off angrily. When Thomas followed him to try to explain, the two brothers began fighting. Joseph told Thomas that because of his actions, their father was in this condition today and was close to dying. He said that if Thomas had quietly come along with him, none of this would have happened. Hearing this, Thomas became furious. He knocked Joseph to the ground and started choking him, but as soon as he realized that he was strangling his own brother, he stopped. After that, Joseph silently got into the car with his unconscious father and left, while Thomas stayed behind at the farm. Later, Charlotte served Thomas a good meal and showed him some things he had never seen before. They spent a nice time together and then moved closer and kissed each other. Just then, Charlotte's father arrived and sent her to another room. On the way back home, Joseph noticed that sheep were running in fear and that piles of soil had formed on the ground. This clearly meant that the creatures were coming from underground. When he reached home, he saw an earthen tunnel near the wall. This frightened him, as it meant the monsters could also be under his house. After taking some care of his father, Joseph went to the workshop and began gathering things according to a new plan. He started closing all the windows. While walking inside the house, he suddenly stepped onto a carpet and fell. Beneath the carpet was a huge hole. Only then did he realize that the monsters had already entered his house. Meanwhile, at the neighbor's farm, Charlotte saw Thomas searching for things in the kitchen. Thomas was very worried about his father, so he wanted to take medicines from there and go back. back. Charlotte found the medicine and gave it to him. Thanking her, Thomas hugged Charlotte tightly and said, "I will come back. Wait for me." But they did not know that someone was listening to their conversation. As Thomas ran outside, one of the farm workers pointed a gun at him and accused him of stealing. Seeing the gun, Thomas panicked. He tried to explain that Charlotte had given him the medicines, but the worker did not listen. All the workers gathered there and took Thomas to the garage. They tied him up and played loud music so that no one could hear his screams. They grabbed his legs, and one man was just about to shoot him when suddenly a hole opened in the ground and the man fell inside. The other workers ran to see what had happened, and at that moment, a creature emerged from the hole. At the farmhouse, Charlotte's parents woke up after hearing strange noises. Her father went to investigate with a candle. Suddenly, a creature entered the room and attacked him. The candle fell to the ground, setting the house on fire. The monster kept jumping back and forth, attacking Charlotte's mother and father. Charlotte's father bravely pulled the creature back, and her mother ran to find her daughter, but the monster caught her as well and vomited her. After that, it began attacking her brutally. Charlotte heard some noises from her room, but by then her parents had already been killed. When everything went quiet, Charlotte came out. Seeing blood stains on the floor, she was terrified. Following the trail of blood, she reached the bathroom, where the creature was carrying her mother's body on its back. In the garage, many people tried to fight the creature, but they could not defeat it. One by one, they were all killed. Even those who managed to escape were chased down. By now, many creatures had arrived there. Thomas, who was still tied up, began struggling desperately. He used all his strength to break the wooden part he was tied to and finally freed his hand. Just then, a creature appeared, but before it could attack, Charlotte knocked it down. The two of them ran out together. Thomas saw that the house was on fire. Charlotte sorrowfully told him that her parents were dead. Then they both decided to go to Thomas's house. Meanwhile, Joseph stuffed a large amount of furniture into the pit to buy some time. He looked at his unconscious father and said, "I won't let anything happen to you." Then he fully prepared himself for the fight. Suddenly, the main door opened, and it was Thomas and Charlotte. Joseph said, "Brother, I need your help. This is very important." During this time, Paul also woke up. He took his medicine and told his sons not to stop fighting. Joseph explained his plan to everyone. He gathered fuel cans from all the garages. Rocco kept barking to warn them of danger. They also pushed an old freezer into the house. Thomas and Charlotte closed the remaining window. Joseph piled up a large stack of furniture and poured all the fuel over it. He placed bombs on top of it and also put his father's burning cigarette there. Suddenly, the entire pile covering the hole began to shake. At the same time, a creature entered the room where Paul was through the chimney. Another monster emerged from the hole. As it passed through the doorway, Thomas stabbed it from behind. The creature turned to attack, but Thomas struck again, this time hitting its head. This time, the creature truly died. A third creature moved towards Charlotte, but she shot it with a gun and knocked it down. Together, they began pushing the freezer. Suddenly, the back door opened, and Paul was already standing there, completely covered in blood. He had killed the monster coming through the chimney. Paul took Charlotte's pistol and fired several shots into the ground, trying to shoot the creatures below. But there were too many monsters, and they began coming out into the hallway one by one. Paul struck the first creature hard with his bat, but the noise drew the entire swarm toward him. Their combined weight was enormous. As Paul kicked the creature at the front, the floor collapsed and all the creatures fell down. A few were still standing, but the boys killed them so that nothing would happen to Paul. Paul was amazed to see how well the three of them were working together. Now the three kids and Rocco ran toward the freezer, but Paul did not go with them. He closed the door and stayed behind so the others could escape. The three of them hid inside the freezer. Paul remembered the moment when he had once held the children in his arms. Just then, a new swarm of creatures arrived. Paul drew their attention to himself. Suddenly, the hole filled with furniture burst open. The entire house collapsed and caught fire. The freezer rolled all the way to the door. When it finally stopped, the boys came out and began searching for Paul among the remaining pieces of the house. Suddenly, a creature appeared. To escape it, everyone ran toward the car and drove away as soon as they got the chance. But now all the burning creatures had come together and formed the shape of a tire. Charlotte fired several shots, but it had no effect. Finally, when the creatures came very close, Charlotte flipped her rifle around and struck with full force, breaking the sphere and sending all the creatures crashing to the ground. After driving a few miles, they stopped the car. Everyone looked up at the sky. The stars were shining. It was the first time they had seen the night sky so peacefully, because before this, they always stayed inside the house at night. The next morning, they reached the location of their old home. They decided not to rebuild their house there. They took whatever useful items they could find. Then they buried their family members and said their final goodbyes. After that, the three of them and Rocco got into the car and drove away, hoping to find new people in a new place. If you liked the video, please like it and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next amazing story. Take care. Bye.